19 R&B stars that live like they are poor. What if the voices that filled stadiums and sold millions of records are now riding the subway, chopping their own firewood, or shopping at thrift stores? Behind the platinum plaques and Grammy speeches lies a truth the music industry rarely admits. One legend slept under Hollywood bridges while his songs played on the radio. One sold 70 million records and received a royalty check for just $1,972. Some lost everything to contracts they didn't understand. Others simply walked away from the glamour on purpose. Today, we're revealing 19 R&B stars who live like they're poor, and the stunning reasons why. Before we begin, subscribe to Hidden Celebrity Stories and tell us in the comments, which of these stories do you already know? Stay with us. Some of these will break your heart. Lauryn Hill. No debut in modern music casts a longer shadow than the miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Released in August 1998, it swept 5 trophies at the 1999 Grammy ceremony, including Album of the Year, the earliest hip-hop and R&B record to conquer that category, and moved beyond 19 million copies across the planet. Born May 26, 1975, in East Orange, New Jersey, Hill had already helped launch the Fugees, whose 1996 album The Score passed 22 million units globally. Before turning 30, she had gathered what most performers never touch. Then she abandoned the machine that built her. Her stated reasons have stayed steady across the years. She found label culture manipulative and creatively suffocating, incompatible with the honesty she required of herself. Determined to guard her children and her artistic freedom in equal measure, she folded inward toward family, spirituality, and a fiercely protected private world. The consequences hit hard where it hurts. In 2013, a court convicted her of neglecting taxes on income exceeding $1.8 million and sentenced her to 3 months behind bars. By her explanation, she had intentionally exited the ordinary financial system as an act of resistance, a stance the legal system declined to accept as justification. Following her release, she traded a grand residence for something plainer and adopted a wandering rhythm, leasing rather than buying, and shifting locations often. Her concerts remain famously unpredictable, occasionally beginning late enough to test even loyal listeners. At 50, she stays a genuine riddle wrapped in reverence. Miseducation still lands like a small miracle decades later, yet the studio follow-up so many awaited has never surfaced. Whether it ever arrives rests, fittingly, on no timeline but her own. A woman who reached the summit of an industry and then decided its rewards were not worth the price it demanded. Mary J. Blige. The crown of hip-hop soul has belonged to Mary J. Blige since the early 1990s, and she has guarded it fiercely with each successive release. Born January 11, 1971, in the Bronx and reared in Yonkers, New York, she emerged from an upbringing where security felt like foreign soil. Her 1992 arrival, What's the 411, ignited a 3-decade residency near the peak of the R&B charts. 9 Grammy statuettes accumulated over the years, joined by an Academy Award nomination for Mudbound that proved her reach extended far past the microphone. Beneath that towering resume, however, ran a tangled ledger. In 2013, reporting revealed she owed the federal tax authority upward of $3.4 million, with additional obligations to the state of New Jersey. Cash was pouring in, yet she has conceded that trustworthy financial stewards were absent from her circle, and the distance between her earnings and her outflow widened into something she could no longer overlook. Her divorce compounded everything. Her 2017 separation from manager and spouse Kendu Isaacs ranked among that year's most agonizing celebrity partings. A judge directed her to hand him $30,000 monthly in interim support, a ruling she characterized as suffocating and deeply unfair. She discussed feeling ambushed, building a shared life only to watch legal machinery reroute her income while she scrambled to recover her footing. Throughout, Blige never masked her beginnings. Raised in public housing, she still cites instant noodles as comfort food and wears her blue-collar origins like an emblem rather than a stain to flee. That refusal to gloss over hardship gives her music its unmistakable grit. At 54, she keeps recording, acting, and battling, demonstrating repeatedly that her royal title was never tethered to the figure printed on any statement, only to the truth she pours into every performance. Erykah Badu. The designation godmother of neo-soul had to be earned by someone, and Erykah Badu claimed it so thoroughly that the debate quietly dissolved. Her 1997 arrival, Baduizm, reached triple platinum certification from the RIWA and installed her at the nucleus of a movement rewriting what Black American music could articulate. Bold follow-ups, Mama's Gun, Worldwide Underground, both installments of New America, form a body of work that rewards patient, repeated listening far beyond what popular records typically offer. Born Erykah Abby Wright on February 26, 1971, in Dallas, Texas, she is 55 and has spent adulthood assembling a life resembling no template for female R&B fame. She still resides in her birthplace, woven into a neighborhood she declined to escape. Her dwelling was constructed with ecological care by intention. She gathers wild vegetation, maintains a compost cycle, and enacts a food and environment philosophy that anticipated the mainstream wellness wave by years. She practiced it long before anyone slapped a brand onto it. She is additionally a credentialed doula, and hardly as decorative window dressing. She has helped usher more than 40 infants into the world within her community, standing as a calming anchor for laboring mothers. She likewise keeps company with the dying in hospice settings, describing herself as part of both the greeting and the farewell committees. Scarcely how most Grammy laureates fill unscheduled hours. She raised 3 children with 3 separate fathers and has steered her private affairs with the identical unorthodox independence coloring everything else about her existence. She seeks approval from nobody, least of all an industry that never quite learned how to file her away. At 55, Erykah Badu endures as one of the most unclassifiable presences American music has ever generated. A woman whose wealth funds a life the industry cannot recognize as its own. Toni Braxton. Judged by every yardstick the recording business honors, Toni Braxton ought to have been financially bulletproof. 7 Grammy Awards, north of 70 million records sold, and a contralto so arresting it could silence a room mid-sentence. Born October 7, 1967, in Severn, Maryland, she inked her deal with LaFace Records at the dawn of the 1990s and vaulted to stardom almost instantly. Unbreak My Heart, Breathe Again, You're Makin' Me High, not mere singles, but the very texture of a decade. Her 1996 album Secrets alone shifted more than 8 million copies. And still, in January 1998, she declared bankruptcy amid debts reportedly climbing toward $50 million. The reasoning enraged observers. Her founding contract, as she herself framed it, was punishingly lopsided, channeling nearly all proceeds away from the artist who generated them. Having sold tens of millions of albums, she collected a royalty payment of precisely $1,972, because the agreement obligated her to repay the label for virtually every production expense. She once quipped she was Poe, lacking the funds for the final 2 letters. She forfeited nearly everything, her Grammy trophies included, briefly confiscated as assets. She reconstructed her life, patiently, and in full public view. A Broadway turn as Belle in Beauty and the Beast, a Las Vegas engagement, and the docuseries Braxton Family Values, airing from 2011 to 2020. Then, in 2010, a second filing arrived, prompted by lupus complications that compelled her to scrap a self-financed Vegas production she couldn't afford to dismantle. At 58, Braxton continues to command stages, record fresh material, and project more magnetism than acts half her age. Her arc doubles as a stark lesson in how thoroughly the industry can strip a performer down, and how ferociously that performer can reclaim what was taken. Charlie Wilson. Audiences encountering Charlie Wilson today, a living monument, a 13-time Grammy nominee, Uncle Charlie, carrying 5 decades of funk and soul with easy authority. Witness pure command. What that portrait hides is the interval when he possessed nothing whatsoever. Born January 29, 1953, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Wilson climbed to prominence, fronting the Gap Band beside brothers Ronnie and Robert, gifting the world "You Dropped a Bomb on Me," "Outstanding," and a treasury of funk staples that still crackle with life. Then the 1990s crashed in. A poisonous quarrel with management left the group blacklisted, and dependency devoured him whole. He forfeited the band, the earnings, the bonds that held him steady. From 1993 through 1995, Charlie Wilson lived without shelter, bedding down in alleyways off Hollywood Boulevard, concealing himself by daylight, and surfacing after dark, dreading recognition. A few unhoused souls who knew his songs looked out for him, scavenging food and fashioning a spot for him to rest. A cousin employed in social work eventually located him and delivered him into a recovery program. He committed to the labor. There he met a caseworker named Maheen, who imposed firm conditions and later became his wife, a union he credits with sustaining his sobriety ever since. His 2005 solo release Charlie, last name Wilson, declared that Uncle Charlie had returned for keeps. He outlasted prostate cancer in 2008 and became a voice for early screening nationwide. He has never entombed those 2 ruinous years, recounting them with the lucidity only survival grants. Today, he lives without excess, anchored by health, faith, and craft. A man who touched bottom and hauled himself upward needs no marble estate to recognize that he has genuinely arrived. The climb itself is the proof he carries. Keith Sweat. Keith Sweat accomplished more than stacking hits. He helped forge the very sonic vocabulary that made those hits achievable. Born July 22, 1961, in Harlem, New York City, he stands widely acknowledged as one of the founders of New Jack Swing, that late 1980s and early 1990s alloy of R&B, hip-hop production, and pop reach that dominated airwaves for close to 10 years. Make It Last Forever, I Want Her, Nobody, Twisted. These cuts didn't merely move units. They stamped an era into memory. Beyond the stage, he has functioned as a radio personality, producer, songwriter, and cultivator of new talent, toiling out of sight for decades alongside his public profile. Preserving that kind of steady relevance within a genre so ruled by fleeting trends is an authentically uncommon achievement. He resides discreetly in a New Jersey suburb, exhibiting no visible hunger for the ostentatious spending his career could easily bankroll. Yet the most surprising element of his private world concerns neither money, property, nor automobiles. It centers on a basketball court somewhere in New Jersey, and a cluster of youngsters who know him not as a multi-platinum recording artist, but simply as Coach Keith. For years, Sweat has donated his hours mentoring youth basketball, never as a staged charitable snapshot, but as a sincere, enduring investment in the neighborhood around him. The children he trains relate to him strictly as their coach. He arrives, he conducts practice, he instructs, he accepts not a cent for any of it. The detail sits so far outside the customary celebrity script that it nearly demands rereading. One of New Jack Swing's inventors devotes leisure time to sharpening kids' athletic abilities in a gym, purely from love of the sport and the community. At 64, he still performs and records while remaining, in the ways that matter most, simply Coach Keith. India Ari. In 2001, India Ari unveiled a song titled Video, opening with a plain assertion: she was neither her hair, nor her skin, nor anyone's projections. For countless listeners, especially Black women, threading through a beauty machine that had spent generations dictating their worth, those words arrived like breathable air. The track earned a Grammy nod. The album Acoustic Soul achieved double platinum status, and almost overnight, she became something the industry seldom manufactures, an authentic alternative. Born India Ari Simpson on October 3, 1975, in Denver, Colorado, and raised in Atlanta following her parents' divorce, she approached music through jewelry crafting, poetry, and an unhurried artistic maturation that resisted sprinting toward fame. Her first record collected 7 Grammy nominations in a single cycle, a benchmark for a debut act at the time. Over her career, she has secured 4 wins from 21 total nods. What eluded her was the blessing of an establishment that pushed her to dress otherwise, present herself more provocatively, and shape music that slotted tidily into radio's commercial pigeonholes. She rejected the whole arrangement. The strain, in her own telling, grew into something she could no longer sustain without misplacing herself. So she withdrew, not for good, but deliberately, on her personal clock. She makes her home in Atlanta, within what she calls a modest residence, distant from the theatrical opulence R&B triumph usually buys. Turning up barefaced at public functions is routine for her. A red carpet persona is not. She meditates, pursues spiritual study with real gravity, tends her own herbs, and issues music only when it springs from a truthful source rather than a corporate schedule. At 50, India.Ari elected substance over apparatus. At every juncture the choice presented itself, and the catalog she assembled testifies to each of those unwavering decisions. Maxwell. In 1996, a young Brooklyn singer released a debut unlike anything crowding the airwaves. Maxwell's urban hang suite was lush, intricate, arranged like a jazz session, and sequenced like a concept record, marking its creator as something genuinely distinct within contemporary R&B. Born Gerald Maxwell Rivera on May 23, 1973, he stepped forward as a pioneering architect of the movement christened Neo-Soul. Then he receded for 8 years, and scarcely anyone tracked where he had gone. That statement is literal, not figurative. Between his sophomore effort Embrya in 1998 and the long-anticipated Black Summer's Night in 2009, Maxwell essentially evaporated from public existence. No fresh material, no meaningful touring, almost no interviews. He resurfaced just frequently enough to signal survival, yet the sustained exposure, defining most major careers, simply never materialized. What the public grasped of his private affairs then, and grasps now, stays sparse by choice. Maxwell inhabits New York City, not the manner in which celebrities usually occupy Manhattan, but the way genuine residents do. A comparatively humble apartment, no swelling entourage, no fleet of luxury vehicles, no digital feeds trumpeting affluence. He has been observed pedaling a bicycle across town to reach the studio, a particular impossible to shake once you've heard it. He performs as an artist instead of a marketing property, someone for whom the music must originate from an honest place or not emerge at all, which clarifies both the chasms between albums and their extraordinary caliber upon arrival. Black Summer's Night entered at #1 on the Billboard 200 in 2009 and earned platinum certification. The interval stretched long. The record justified every day of it. At 52, Maxwell remains among R&B's most guarded, prominent figures, projecting the impression of a man wholly complete without a spotlight ever pointed his way. Macy Gray. Certain vocalists blur into the crowd. Then there is Macy Gray, whose instrument is so unmistakable that 3 hummed notes would identify her at once. That gravelly, jazz-tinted, wholly one-of-a-kind voice captured a Grammy in 2001 for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance with I Try, a song that didn't simply chart, but embedded itself permanently in the recollection of everyone who encountered it. Born Natalie Renee McIntyre on September 6, 1967, in Canton, Ohio, Gray has assembled a career sprawling across studio albums, film parts, and collaborations that vault between clashing genres. The id, The trouble with being myself. Stripped, she has partnered with figures ranging from Erykah Badu to the metal titans of Metallica, while her screen credits encompass Training Day and The Paperboy, a spread suggesting someone who treats a vocation as an artistic experiment rather than a brand blueprint. She possesses money. That point isn't disputed. What renders her truly atypical in the R&B terrain is what she elects to do with it, which amounts to nothing remotely flashy. She occupies a modest, comfortable dwelling around Los Angeles. Not a fortified compound with a security detail and a guest house, just a house. She speaks candidly, and with evident glee, about her fondness for thrift shopping. While fellow Grammy holders were dropping $40,000 or $50,000 on bespoke designer gowns for award season, Gray cheerfully sifted second-hand racks for something that felt genuinely hers. She holds no allegiance to labels, has stated so outright, and her lifestyle corroborates it. No towering entourage, no reality television footprint, no meticulously engineered social persona broadcasting riches. At 58, she continues recording and touring entirely on her own conditions. She embodies one of the scarce cases in modern R&B of a star who scaled the peak and then chose merely to live like a human being, not a brand, not an emblem, just a person. Johnny Gill. Johnny Gill began singing gospel in Washington, D.C. at 16, releasing his first album in 1983, when he had barely reached driving age. He later stepped in for Bobby Brown within New Edition, among the most heavily scrutinized lineup changes in group history, and somehow made it stick, winning over a fan base with every reason to reject the newcomer. He notched solo hits, joined the supergroup LSG alongside Keith Sweat and Gerald Levert, and clung to the R&B charts in one shape or another for over 4 decades. Born May 22, 1966, in Washington, D.C., Gill is 59 and has banked enough industry standing to warrant nearly any lifestyle that riches and renown might supply. Instead, he settled on a townhouse in Atlanta, a fine one, though hardly a compound, hardly an estate, nothing engineered to broadcast celebrity from across the street. By numerous accounts, he ranks as an exceptionally warm neighbor, the sort who fires up barbecues, waves people inside, and chats across the fence like someone who authentically relishes dwelling within a community rather than walling himself off from it. His social existence genuinely orbits the people nearby, friends, neighbors, the casual gathering that needs no publicist to assemble. He never had to fabricate approachability, because he never truly retreated behind the fortress of celebrity infrastructure that isolates so many artists from ordinary rhythms. The voice that carried My to the summit of the R&B charts in 1991 belongs to a man who appears to actively favor the company of regular folks over the curated settings fame typically dispenses. Something quietly radical hums beneath a career as extended and prosperous as his being lived with this measure of normalcy. At 59, Johnny Gill endures as one of American R&B's under-recognized gems, a singer of true force who never mistook the magnitude of his gift for a mandate to build walls. Anthony Hamilton. A distinct breed of soul music springs neither from a studio booking nor a label blueprint. It rises from red clay, gospel choirs, and the emotional density of a life lived near the ground. Anthony Hamilton carries that music the way certain people carry a regional accent, not acquired, but inherited from birth. Born January 28, 1971, in Charlotte, North Carolina, he sang in his church choir at 10 and honed his early discipline through his high school's choral program before heading toward New York in pursuit of a career. The path proved brutal. His first album was buried by Uptown Records over feeble commercial numbers, and he passed years penning songs for other artists and lending background vocals, including touring with D'Angelo on the Voodoo World Circuit. His deliverance finally came through the 2003 album Comin' From Where I'm From, certified platinum by the RIA, drawing 4 Grammy nominations and yielding songs that cemented his voice as indispensable to American soul. Then unfolds the twist that genuinely astonishes people. After all of it, Hamilton returned home, and not in some symbolic sense. He went back to North Carolina and purchased a 30-acre farm where he has dwelled ever since. He hunts for sustenance, raises livestock, splits firewood, and works a garden. His security presence stays minimal for a figure of his stature because, in his own words, he doesn't feel the need for more. He isn't staging rural authenticity for an audience's benefit. He simply prefers an existence bound to something real and tangible over the abstracted luxury the industry routinely hands its most triumphant artists as compensation. At 55, Hamilton keeps recording and performing, issuing Pages, a collaborative spoken word and melody venture with actor Omari Hardwick, in August 2025. The 30 acres remain, the farming life remains, and that voice remains. Musique Soulchild. When Talib Johnson surfaced in 2000 under the banner Musique Soulchild, his debut I Just Wanna Sing felt anchored in vintage soul tradition, while sitting squarely in its own moment. Just Friends, Love, Don't Change. These weren't ordinary songs, but records that left people feeling understood. He gathered 2 American Music Award victories and an ASCAP Rhythm and Soul Award, and from the outset he was the authentic article. Born September 16, 1977, in Philadelphia, as the eldest of 9 children within a strict Muslim household, Johnson matured while breathing one of the nation's most fertile musical legacies. Philadelphia Soul, the sumptuous, orchestrated, profoundly emotional sound of the 1970s, surrounded him, and he transported it into the neo-soul surge, helping define what that surge could sound like when it committed fully to emotional candor over commercial gloss. His commercial apex was striking. Louvain Music, his 2007 Atlantic Records debut, opened at number 1 on the Billboard 200, selling 149,000 copies in its opening week. He was a bona fide mainstream star, and he resided in a row house in Philadelphia. Not a rambling estate, not a penthouse, but a row house in the very neighborhood that raised him, in a city he has described as the force keeping him from drifting away from his own self. He speaks fondly of his neighbors, of how everyday people in everyday neighborhoods keep a person truthful in ways gated enclaves never manage. He is also a celebrated rider of public transit, a multi-platinum artist who will board a bus or subway without hesitation, not as a display of modesty, but because it's practical, and he has no appetite for the attention a luxury car draws. At 48, Musique Soulchild stands as one of Philadelphia's quietly remarkable cultural exports, a man who reached the top and judged the view from his row house perfectly sufficient. Ledisi. She has sung for a sitting president. She has amassed 13 Grammy nominations and triumphed for Best Traditional R&B Vocal Performance. Fellow musicians regard her among the finest pure singers of her generation, an artist whose technical mastery and emotional span place her in a bracket occupied by very few living voices. She also frequents thrift stores routinely and joyfully, betraying no self-consciousness about the gulf between that habit and the heights she has scaled. Born Ledisi Young on March 14, 1972, in New Orleans and raised in Oakland, California, she assembled her career by the most grueling route, independently, on the road, gathering supporters one show at a time, long before any major label expressed interest. Her 2007 album Lost and Found drew wider notice, and Turn Me Loose in 2009, and Pieces of Me in 2011 anchored her among the most esteemed names in contemporary R&B and soul. She lives in Oakland, her hometown, the city that molded her musical instincts, and one she has never felt compelled to trade for the glossier address's success customarily purchases. She portrays herself, plainly, as the girl next door, if the girl next door happened to wield one of the most extraordinary voices in American music. The thrift shopping is entirely real. She discusses it with an eagerness, making unmistakable that it isn't a manufactured emblem of relatability, but a true preference. She delights in the search, unearths singular pieces, and feels no pull toward lavishing extravagant sums on clothing to advertise a status she seems fundamentally uninterested in. At 54, Ledisi keeps recording and touring, upholding a reputation erected solely upon the quality of her voice and the depth of her musicianship, two attributes that second-hand garments have never eroded in the faintest degree. Tevin Campbell. Quincy Jones does not stumble upon average talent. When the legendary producer noticed a teenage singer from Waxahachie, Texas, in the late 1980s and resolved to back him, he was identifying something exceptional. Tevin Campbell, born Tevin Jermod Campbell on November 12, 1976, held a 5-octave range and an innate musicality Jones perceived at once. The hits materialized swiftly. Tomorrow, A Better You, Better Me, from the 1990 Listen Up soundtrack, topped the R&B charts before Campbell had even reached his teens. Round and Round, produced by Prince, came next. Can We Talk and I'm Ready landed in the mid-1990s and installed him among the commanding voices of that period's R&B. He was a teen idol and a legitimate star, a trajectory that by every visible indicator should have compounded across decades. Instead, he stepped away. The pressures of fame arriving so early, the ceaseless scrutiny, the crushing expectations, the apparatus that treats young talent as product rather than person, extracted their toll. A 1999 incident involving law enforcement introduced complication into a public image that had always been carefully tended. He exited the spotlight and spent years, as he has described it, working out who he was when no one was observing. The answer, apparently, involves a modest Los Angeles condominium, a tranquil life elevating privacy over performance, and a sincere love of gardening, the particular serenity that flows from sinking your hands into soil and growing something requiring no publicist. He has resurfaced in recent years, performing occasionally, and reminding listeners why that voice merited discovery in the first place. Yet the superstar hunger appears authentically extinguished, supplanted by something calmer, and, by his own account, more fulfilling. At 49, Campbell stands as proof that premature fame need never dictate the remainder of a life. Dawn Robinson. En Vogue sold beyond 20 million records. They landed hits on every principal chart, graced the covers of Rolling Stone, Essence, and Vibe, and claimed 7 MTV Video Music Awards. By any commercial standard, they ranked among the most successful female groups in American history. Dawn Robinson, born November 24, 1966, in New London, Connecticut, was one of 4 founding members who erected that legacy from nothing. She sang lead on My Lovin', You're Never Gonna Get It, Free Your Mind, and the colossal 1996 hit Don't Let Go, Love, her final single, with the group ahead of a departure that became one of the most dissected exits in R&B lore. But the trophies and platinum plaques concealed a harsher reality. The money never arrived the way it should have. En Vogue had signed what the trade calls a 360 deal, an arrangement handing the label and producers a slice of not merely record sales, but touring revenue, merchandise, and virtually every income channel the group generated. Robinson has addressed this publicly and with palpable frustration, portraying women who packed arenas and sold tens of millions of records being treated as employees rather than owners of their own labor. She has stated she pocketed more from a conventional office job than she ever earned within one of the planet's most celebrated vocal groups. By 2018, reporting indicated she confronted eviction from her New York residence and subsisted on roughly $2,000 monthly, a figure nearly impossible to square against En Vogue's magnitude of success. She joined the cast of R&B divas Los Angeles in 2013, which restored some visibility but couldn't reverse decades of financial harm inflicted by contracts she signed as a young woman, with no means of grasping what she was consenting to. At 59, she remains one of the finest voices the group ever produced. Aaron Hall. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, the group Guy proved as pivotal to New Jack Swing's ascent as any act recording during that stretch. Teddy Riley's production brilliance furnished the sonic scaffolding. Aaron Hall furnished the voice, a raw, forceful, emotionally unbridled instrument, lending the music its urgency and its edge. Born August 10, 1964, Hall sang lead on Groove Me, I Like, and Let's Chill, records still standing as essential artifacts of that period. His solo run produced Don't Be Afraid in 1992, a #1 R&B hit confirming he could hold attention entirely on his own. At his zenith, he counted among the most singular voices in urban music. The image ran hard, flashy, and aggressive in the fashion New Jack Swing frequently projected. Music that flaunted its confidence loudly and without apology. An energy Hall inhabited on stage completely. Off-stage, the truth has consistently run far quieter. Hall occupies a walk-up apartment in New York City. Not a penthouse, a walk-up, meaning no elevator, meaning he ascends the stairs, meaning the building belongs to the ordinary New York variety that houses teachers, nurses, and transit workers rather than artists boasting chart toppers. He rides the subway, a detail admirers have verified by glimpsing him aboard trains, headphones on, coursing through the city like one of 8 million New Yorkers, with somewhere to be and no special need to arrive by limousine. The man who marketed an image of street toughness on record turned out, in daily practice, to be genuinely indistinguishable from his neighbors. At 61, Hall's ties to the industry are remote, and his lifestyle quietly rebuts nearly every assumption that magnitude of success is supposed to breed. The subway card still swipes fine. The stairs are merely stairs, and he climbs them like anyone else in the building. Case. The mid-1990s produced a specific strain of R&B that valued emotional precision above spectacle, music examining what it felt like to fall in love or forfeit it, delivered with a straightforwardness the decade's more elaborate productions occasionally smothered. Case ranked among the clearest voices in that lineage. Born Case Woodard on January 22, 1969, he emerged with Touch Me, Tease Me in 1996, a collaboration with Foxy Brown that ascended to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and introduced his voice to an instantly receptive audience. Happily Ever After followed, and for a spell in the late 1990s, Case was a dependable fixture on R&B radio, his smooth, restrained delivery furnishing a steady counterbalance to the era's more maximalist inclinations. He ultimately traded New York for Atlanta, a migration common among R&B artists of his generation, who discovered the southern city offered a gentler pace, lower expenses, and a scene that still prized their brand of soul. He settled into an unassuming home there and constructed a life conspicuously detached from the industry apparatus that first lifted him. The volunteering is the detail that shapes this chapter of his story. Case has been known to lend his time to organizations serving Atlanta's unhoused population, not as a promotional stunt, not as content for a feed, but as a quiet, enduring commitment to people holding considerably less than he does. A full-circle resonance runs through the image of a man who sings about love and intimacy for a living, choosing to spend his private hours in service to those wrestling with the most basic necessities. At 57, Case remains an occasional presence in R&B, performing when the opportunity harmonizes with the life he has built. The Atlanta house stays modest. The shelter work carries on. 19 voices that shaped the sound of a generation. Some lost fortunes to unfair contracts, others walked away from wealth by choice. But it leaves us with a question worth sitting with. When a superstar lives simply, is it wisdom, or is it the quiet aftermath of an industry that took everything first? Toni Braxton sold 70 million records for a $1,972 check. Maxwell rides a bicycle by choice. Are these stories of humility or of slow robbery dressed up as grace? There's no single answer, only the one you carry. Share your thoughts in the comments below and tell us which story surprised you most. If tales like these move you, subscribe to Hidden Celebrity Stories and stay with us, because the truth behind the fame deserves to be seen.